Welcome to Startup Secrets. We continue our series of interviews where Barry and I get to meet founders of a range of startup ventures and hear their stories and find out what makes them a special breed of entrepreneur. In this episode, we're delighted to meet Martina Skelly, co-founder and CEO of YellowSchedule. Martina is an award-winning startup entrepreneur with vast experience in digital marketing. Martina has also co-founded SportsTech Ireland in 2016 and has an advisory role in Tech Ireland, both in the sporting sector. Martina, you're very welcome to Startup Secrets.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks very much for having me. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you here today.
Great. Martina, our opening question is quite simply, who is Martina Skelly?
Okay. I suppose I'm very interested in technology, always have been, very kind of interested in knowledge and learning. I remember, I don't think I was quite a teenager yet, and I won a set of encyclopedia at home. And my happy place was going into the good room at home, the quiet room, which is where my parents had displayed the encyclopedia on a shelf. I would pick out a random book, open it as a random page, and I could sit there for hours just going through this stuff. And obviously this was pre-internet days, so always very much driven by knowledge, by what I didn't know. Very interested in travel as well, and in many ways that's kind of been a big part of my journey. And I think sometimes a lot of the entrepreneurs I've met are would be similarly driven, this kind of thirst for knowledge, for travel, for finding out more about the stuff that they don't know, and trying to get their head around that. I suppose at this stage, middle-aged mammy, 3 kids, 10 chickens, 1 dog, 1 husband. My husband always says it comes in that order of importance as well. And, I would say I've always been a very calm person, very data-driven, probably very easygoing as well. Quite competitive always with myself more so. So, I was quite driven in school, did well in secondary school, found it quite easy. But I would say kind of my path from there to here wasn't necessarily linear. I went into a marketing degree straight after secondary school, realized that I hated it, which is a little bit ironic given that a lot of what I'm doing now is marketing and I like it and I'm good at it. But absolutely hated the degree, dropped out before the first year, and did a postgrad in office administration, ended up working then for a couple of years in a job I loved, which was Irish Ferries. Found I was very good with customers. And it's funny because if I think back then, there were little things I was picking up even on the kind of the processes that we were going through there, that some of them I felt they were inefficient. And at one point they introduced a suggestion box. Actually the suggestion box was my idea initially as well, but this suggestion box, little bits and pieces that I was putting in, I found that they were actually always taken up and they were enacted. So I guess I've always had that ability to see stuff that's not quite working well and what I would do to change it. So that's probably been there from a relatively early age. I ended up going traveling, backpacking by myself around Italy, found an Irishman there accidentally. We spent some time living on a Greek island. We lived in China for years. I ended up doing a degree in Plymouth, the University of Plymouth, which was a really great hybrid. It was a mix of kind of digital art, coding, philosophy. And in some ways that was kind of my springboard back into the working world. Before YellowSchedule, I had a digital marketing agency then called Activate. And then kind of the next piece or the next step for me then was into YellowSchedule. So definitely not linear, but kind of learning stuff along the way and always enjoying the journey.
Oh, that's some journey, all right. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So Martina, you might give us a little brief about what it is YellowSchedule does now, but crucially, what is it that you do?
Okay, so YellowSchedule, we're a cloud-based platform for healthcare scheduling. So basically we try and drive efficiencies within an organization. It's going to save costs, it's going to reduce waiting lists, but crucially it's just going to lead to a better, a better patient experience. We're still, an SME, so my role is still very much hands-on, but a big part of my role, I suppose, would be stepping back and just looking at our overall strategy. I would also be looking at what's happening in the world. And obviously, that came into play hugely in terms of the pandemic recently. And I mentioned earlier, we'd spent time in China a good while back. So, let's say January last year, I would still watch a lot of the news around China, and I was kind of disappearing down tunnels on Twitter and, seeing images of apartments being boarded up and tanks rolling down streets and kind of thinking, this looks really, really serious. And realizing that if this did actually, escape China and started kind of hitting us here in Europe or further afield, that our business is fully based on enabling face-to-face appointments. So our customers were in trouble and we were in trouble if this happened. So we've been talking about enabling telehealth as part of our platform for a while. And we just brought that forward. So we started that in January and we actually launched it the day that large parts of the US went into lockdown, which was great. We were able to get it up and running. It meant we didn't lose any customers. And, obviously then for ourselves, we didn't take a step down in revenue. In fact, we would have gone up in revenue. So I think a large part of any CEO has to be really just, looking at the lie of the land, and it might be different today than it was yesterday, and always just having kind of feelers out for what's happening, both threats and opportunities as well. Opportunities change very fast, and the pandemic would have brought threats, but equally, would have brought many opportunities.
Brilliant. And what, in your view, makes a successful startup?
I think, some of it is luck. Some of it is luck around timing. You can have the right idea and it can be too early. And it can be a super idea and it can be too early. Sometimes it's actually connections as well. You can have somebody sitting in Mongolia with the super idea for Airbnb, but they don't have the access to capital. They don't have the connections to make it happen. Whereas if you're sitting in somewhere like New York or San Francisco, you do have better access to capital or people who will understand the potential scale of what you're talking about, and not just dismiss it. So, there's not necessarily something that just encapsulates, if you do this, you'll be successful. There's so many variables. There's a balance between being tenacious and knowing when to quit as well. And it's really hard to kind of give a definitive answer there. Sometimes you do have to just be tenacious and stay through the difficult early days. But equally, I would have seen people who stayed too long in their company when it was obvious that the opportunity cost for them was huge. And, even the cost of their family was huge. And they had the potential to be in a very high earning salary, perhaps as, a senior dev in a company, but they just could not give up on this idea. So the answer there is really hard. And I'm not necessarily sure that I have it. I think we have been very tenacious. I think our timing in some ways has been good. We ended up making some good connections. So, there's probably a mix of skill, timing, and luck, I would say, for us.
Excellent. Yeah.
A common theme, I suppose, Martin, a common theme that comes across some of the other founders is two words which I think are very powerful, which is passion and purpose. And I think you're alluding to some of them there in terms of driving your business forward. So what makes you so passionate about driving your business forward?
Well, I suppose the way YellowSchedule started actually was it was a personal problem. So my eldest child was having hearing difficulties and we were sent for an ENT appointment. And actually, our GP said, wait for this guy. The wait is really long. Back when we thought 6 months was a really long waiting list, she said, wait for this guy. He's really good. And I have a difficulty with a couple of things, dates, times, left, right, stuff like that. I couldn't tell you my wedding anniversary. And so I genuinely struggle with dates, and I remembered the date incorrectly. It was a 6-month gap between getting the appointment and actually the appointment itself. We didn't have a reminder. We just had a letter pinned to a wall somewhere. So I forgot the right date for the appointment. We missed it. And I remember being really annoyed. My daughter was annoyed at me anyway. She had to sit at the top near the teacher because she wasn't hearing her properly. So she was annoyed at me for forgetting. I was annoyed at myself. And then I was annoyed that I'd cost somebody else the opportunity of that appointment because I knew it was valuable. I knew there was a 6-month waiting list. And just prior to that, I had kind of project managed and wireframed and designed out the functionality for Irish Farmhouse B&B. So that was a 300 strong member group at that point. And this was prior to Airbnb. So we'd managed to get their live appointment or their live room availability online. And you're talking about, you know, Ban-on-Tees. Some of them were in the wilds of Donegal. They might have had 1 or 2 bedrooms free, but they were getting their inventory online. They were managing it. So, you know, I just thought, God, this is kind of bonkers that if we can have people who are seen, and not necessarily fairly, but seen as, you know, technically not necessarily all that up to date, but they're managing their live inventory online. So you can have somebody sitting in California booking a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, you know, in beautiful Mayo or Donegal, and getting live availability instead of this back and forth of emails. That healthcare really is behind in terms of, you know, scheduling the appointments, the wastage in the system, the reminders themselves. And that's actually really what sparked the whole journey. I spoke to my brother, and, you know, the set of skills just worked out really well. He's a senior development. He'd done some back end kind of database security for banks. He'd done some work for international clients where he had to integrate kind of an international SMS solution. So it was just a good range of skills. We initially conducted a feasibility study. I had an idea in my head of how I wanted this to work. And we didn't find something out there that did exactly kind of what we were planning or in the same way. And we just felt that there was an opportunity there for us.
Fantastic. I'm always amazed that most of the founders we've spoken to, it has been an issue in their own life that has turned into the business, if you understand, whether it's something they've had with their bank and they've said, I can do it better, or like you said, it's a missed appointment. It's fantastic to see how people just turn an opportunity. It goes back to that idea that an opportunity comes to pass, not to pause, and you captured that opportunity the minute it came across your lap, which is fantastic. Now, a very simple question. If you were to go back to when you were 18 years of age and write yourself a letter, what would you write yourself?
You know, I was thinking about this. I nearly think you're better off not writing the letter to some extent. If I'd have known how hard it was, and I might not necessarily have started it. And yet at the same time, I'm delighted. You know, I love what we do. I love the values of the company. I love the quality of the product. You know, our customer testimonials are superb. Our staff love working for us. So in some ways it's been a tough journey, and I don't think you'll find an entrepreneur who would say otherwise. But it's been very rewarding. There's been huge professional development. We've stayed true to our values. My personal values are very much about bringing your authentic self to work and being yourself. It's about honesty, integrity, openness, and that is the way it is with the organization. If I was to give myself one piece of advice, I would say find somebody who will push you up that hill, basically. So what I mean by that is I found that I progressed further when I found a mentor. So, and actually this person that I'm talking about in particular is Gráinne Barry. So she's one of my co-founders with SportsTech Ireland. And again, she's huge business experience, very experienced entrepreneur, a very smart woman, very similar values, you know, authenticity, openness, honesty, excellence. And really, when we started up, we weren't necessarily friends. I mean, we're very close friends now, but it was to find somebody on a similar journey who could push us. So, you know, making a commitment. You know, Gráinne might say to me, these are the 3 people that you said to me you were going to phone last week. How did you get on with them? Did you phone them? So even, you know, just say, well, yeah, I phoned 1. Well, why didn't you phone the other 2? Okay, I really should phone the other 2. Or even to think bigger, you know, why are you talking to this person? Would you not just go to the head of the organization? To think bigger. And that's usually somebody outside you, I would say your immediate friends or family. You know, family can temper your journey sometimes because they're a bit worried about you. And there were certainly days at the start where my parents, who were huge supporters and very, very proud, would have said, would it not be easier to go back and just get a paid job and be able to switch off at the weekend? So, yeah. You know, your friends, your family, as I said, they kind of almost the worry about you personally can sometimes temper their advice. So that's been a game changer for me, to find somebody who will push me up that hill. And, you know, Gráinne went on to co-found, along with another friend of ours, SportsTech Ireland. And again, you know, that was just seeing that kind of the impact really of the recession in Limerick, and feeling driven to, well, what can I do? And I suppose, you know, that might be another kind of shared attribute really of an entrepreneur, not necessarily to look at something and say that's terrible, but to look at something and say, God, is there something I can do? Are there people in my network? Is there something that I can pull together, you know, to try and have an impact on this?
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Martina. And I suppose on behalf of Barry and I, we thank you sincerely for taking the time to talk to us and share your startup secrets. And it's been so insightful, and we really appreciate your time. And we wish you and everybody in YellowSchedule all the very best for the future.
Thanks very much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Martina.
Thanks, Martina.